Hello there. Welcome, everyone. I'm Gary Huggins, Executive Director of the Direct Selling Education Foundation. We're so glad that you joined us today for this great discussion that we're going to have. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone to register for some upcoming DSA and Dscf events, and those include the upcoming joint board meeting of the DSA and Dscf Board of Directors. That'll be a virtual meeting scheduled for June 23rd, and we want to invite all of you here with us today to listen in to those discussions. It's going to be a really interesting conversation, an interactive discussion of what constitutes harm in voluntary business arrangements. That's going to be led by DSCF fellow Dr. Ann Coughlin of Northwestern University, but it'll engage all of the board members of both organizations in an important discussion, an important topic for the industry. RSVP links have been sent to everyone in this webinar's chat window, and they can also be accessed through the DSA website. If you want to go that way, just go to the calendar section and navigate to news and events, and you'll there. But we really hope you join us for that discussion. It's going to be a great conversation as well. Really looking forward and very excited about the guests we have today and our discussion about building your digital brand and social media best practices. We have two DSCF fellows that are joining us today, and excited to do these conversations as part of the DSCF Insight series and the DSA Engage series, where we're able to highlight the expertise in the research of our fellows that we partnered with, academic fellows and partners that DSCF has partnered with. Two of those with us today are Dr. Stephanie Boyer, who's professor of marketing at Bryant University in Rhode Island. Stephanie is also co-founder of Rainmakers, which is a virtual platform for training and assessing sales talent. I believe there's 45 universities that are partnering with Stephanie on that Rainmakers program. It's something that we participated and supported as well from the foundation's perspective. We also have another fellow, Dr. Sharmeen Adaran, professor of marketing at Bryant University as well. In addition to teaching innovative and hands-on courses in digital marketing, she runs a successful consulting business that's aimed at helping companies develop and implement strategic digital marketing plans. So together, Stephanie and Sharmeen are also authors of a new book titled The Little Black Book of Social Media. And that'll a lot of our discussion will cover that book today. With our audience, I just want to point out a couple of things. First, we're going to be recording this broadcast, so we'll send out a link so that you can share this conversation and these insights with your colleagues and with your field, if you choose to do that. Also, we want to make this an engagement, and we want to make this as interactive as possible. So as you're listening, please send questions to the chat window. We'd love to have your either insights, thoughts, or questions. And our guests have made a very generous offer in that they're going to give away 3 copies of their books, and we'll give those copies to the first 3 people who give us questions that get used in the discussion following our initial set of questions and discussion with Sharmeen and Stephanie. So please be active in that chat. Also be active in sharing insights with each other, not just asking questions of us and Stephanie and Sharmeen, but also engaging with each other. We like that back and forth as well. So without further ado, I'll bring in Stephanie and Sharmeen. And I want to ask the first question. Tell us a little bit about your book and what moved you to write it.
Well, thank you so much for having us here. We really appreciate your support, especially with the Rainmakers and providing training to students. So thank you so much. And we really just decided to create this book because we needed something for our classes. That was really the first motivation. And we needed a training guide for our students. So I focus on LinkedIn posting and social selling for my students. And Sharmeen focuses it on her digital marketing class. And her students actually run the social media for the accounts of companies. And we really wanted to also make an impact. We're asked for advice from companies to create plans, maybe oversee some of their social, help position them. And we're really not able to help everybody. So the book is a very affordable solution that anyone can pick up and follow to guide them. And we see so many mistakes that people make and companies make, and the mistakes really waste a lot of time, and it can create frustration for everybody involved. And we really see there's kind of 4 areas that people make the most mistakes that we see, and the book tries to answer these. We actually created an acronym around it called PAVE. And I could just tell you quickly these 4 mistakes that we see so many people, so many companies making. Is that something you want to start out with, Gary? You want to hear the 4 major mistakes?
I think that's a great call. Yeah.
Okay. So the first P is, or the first letter is P in PAVE, and that's about purpose. We see so many companies, so many people just posting, and there's no real clear strategy. They don't even seem like, it doesn't seem like they know what they want from their social. They're just posting to post because they say, oh, I need to get out there. And the posts just aren't purposeful. And we've seen them all. And you're scrolling through your feed maybe, and you're thinking, why are you posting that? It doesn't make any sense. And, or it's just not really on target. Maybe somebody is promoting nutrition, and then you also see them posting about a drinking spree that they're having. And it just, you know, it just doesn't seem to make sense. The next one is the A in PAVE is audience. And companies are guilty of this, and so are individuals. And they haven't identified the target audience for their posts. The messages just seem like they're for anybody that's willing to listen. And when you do that, the people who don't like what they hear, they're going to block you. They're going to unfollow you, or they're going to silence you. And when you do that, it's going to affect the algorithms so that your posts are actually going to have a tougher time being seen by the people who actually might want to see them, right? So if you have, maybe you have a Facebook friend, and that person is just constantly posting pictures and messages about their business on their personal page, you start to get tired of it, especially if it's just not something that's interesting to you. Then the next one is V, and that's all about value. And this is really important when it comes to selling, which I teach selling at Bryant. I run the sales program. And this is so important when you're in sales, is that you have to have some impact in your message, right? And what we're seeing is that there's no impact for the person receiving the message in a lot of the posts. And what that really means is that there's no value proposition, and there's really nothing in it for the audience. And so sometimes we forget to think, why does the audience want to see the post, right? What are you doing from them? So if you're telling your story over and over and over again, what additional value is that adding? You know, what is in it for that person? Are you entertaining them? Are you educating? Is it making them really feel good? So you got to think about that. And then the final component that we see that is such a huge mistake is engagement. And it's really easy to forget that social media is actually managed by a human being on the other end. Like, you're communicating with people, they're not just numbers. So I see a lot of posts that are really centered around just the person that's posting, right? And they're talking about themselves, and maybe they're, you know, putting promotions out there, but they're not really engaging with people. They don't really write back when people are engaging. So it's important to really remember that communication is not a one-way street. It goes both ways. And just like you would in person, if you walked into the room and someone said hi to you and you just ignored them, at some point the person's just going to stop saying hi. So really that engagement and identifying a strategy, we don't see it. And what ends up happening is that you start to get really stressed out, because as your business starts to grow, as your audience starts to grow, it's hard to really keep up with that. So the book tries to make sure that you avoid some of the pitfalls and you just get it right from the start.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Stephanie. Charmaine, as you think about the COVID-19 environment, and there's so many adjustments and pivots going on, what trends do you see, or what's different as we've gone through this pandemic, anything new and different since you guys have written the book, and maybe parts of the book that even resonate more given the situation that we're all in.
I remember to unmute myself. Thanks, Gary. And I'm so happy to be here with all of you today. So thanks for having us. Yeah, so, listen, like Stephanie said, we kind of created this training workbook so brands could ignite their brand online, right? So we really think it's prime time to take it seriously and kind of follow, step by step, how to take some of the theories and concepts that we dig into in our classroom and apply them to brands online. So some of the trends that we're seeing right now is, people are spending more time indoors, they're spending more time online, they're buying online, they're buying on mobile, right? And they're spending more money on convenience items, essentials like groceries, household items, entertainment, right? And studies are showing that 62% of Americans, for 62% of Americans, digital is a key trigger for discovering new places to shop. And so here we're talking about, the share of voice on social media, online ads, people doing proactive searches online, compared to the traditional kind of print, TV, radio, or even the referral from a family or a friend. And so as we as consumers are focusing our attention on digital media at home, advertisers are reporting that video and search, social, e-commerce are providing the highest ROI. And since we're spending so much of our time as marketers online, companies have to pay attention to attribution, right? So we really are focusing on how can we see the impact of our social media marketing, and assign value to the channels that are sending the business our way. So companies like, I was researching made.com, right? They compared their average order value of people who went to their site from social and their site average, and the social media fans, they spent 4% more per order, right? In Contact, they trained half of their sales reps on social selling and found that these reps had 160% bigger sales pipeline and achieved 215% more revenue than those without, right? So we're really seeing this shift and this focus and attribution, and how to measure and attribute where our sales are coming from is really, really important. And also, I think another trend that's become so important is to focus on that P, or that purpose, right? And taking back to the mission of what are we offering that's of value to our audience, right? And how can we take that mission and communicate that through online, ways? So one example, I work with a lot of clients, a lot of nonprofits. One of them locally here in Providence is the Providence Children's Museum. And obviously this is the kind of place where you go into the space, it's education for the children, it's sensory, exploratory fun, and now everything's shut down, right? So we decided to suggest, why don't you continue providing value to families, but from home? And it's really invaluable information of how do we keep our kids educated, busy, sensory play at home. And so they were able to connect with their audience and kind of stay in the minds of families. And so that when this is all over, right, they're still top of mind as the one that created that value for the families. So I think these are some of the trends that are driving a lot of the shifts. And again, hitting that core value message and communicating that appropriately, and really designing some interesting online strategies.
Got it. Well, Stephanie, as you think about building our own brands, direct selling companies have an established brand that's used by their independent sales force. How important is it for those independent consultants to establish their own brand within the parameters of the company rules? But how important is it to establish their own brand on social media as well?
That's a good question. And there are a lot of things that you packed into that question. All right. It's the branding and then staying within the rules. Gosh, it really is critical, because if you look at how people buy from people first, then they buy from the company, then they buy from the product. And that consultant is really the face of the company. So for example, I had a friend in college who was my roommate. And a few years ago, she started selling Unique. And she asked me to host a party for her online. And she lives in Florida. I live in Rhode Island. And of course I said yes. I trust her, and I want to support her. And, you know, we had a party. I invited a bunch of people. I bought a bunch of the products. A bunch of my own network bought a bunch of the products. It was a lot of fun. But I did that because she's my friend and I trust her. Now, building a brand helps you to position yourself as a thought leader, as a trusted advisor. And the brand that you're building, it helps people to get to know you without having to live with them, right? Because we can't live with everybody we want to do business with to have such a great relationship. And being that trusted advisor really makes you the resource, and it allows you to provide the service for the customer. And especially right now, a lot of consumers have this decision paralysis, you know, where there's just too many choices. They don't know what to do, and they leave their shopping cart full, or they just can't pull the trigger. And as that trusted advisor, you help them to choose, you help them to feel confident and avoid buyer's remorse. You know, we've all had that feeling where we purchase something and we're like, oh gosh, why did I do that? That was a bad choice. And we feel really bad about it. But building that brand, creating those relationships, it helps you to make the person feel really good about the product and know that they made the right choice. Help them into the choice, right? And you're helping to really make that experience so much better. And so for companies, an easy way to start to help your advisors and your consultants to create that brand, to create the foundation, is helping them to align their value, their talent, and their passion. And you really have to have all those together. You can't just build a brand based on your passion, right? You have to have values and you have to have talents aligned. Now, the good thing for a lot of these companies is if their consultants are there already participating and selling, then they probably already are valuing helping people because they're in that business. And maybe they're passionate about improving people's lives by doing whatever the product does. You know, it could be making you healthier, feeling better. But, you know, that's not enough. They have to really have some kind of talent. So what are they good at? Are they great at networking? Are they great at telling stories? Are they great at teaching? You know, they have to have some kind of talent as well. And when you identify those and you pull them all together, you get all the elements together, then that is their basis for communication, right? So that's how they're able to communicate and tell their own stories that align with the company's values and their mission. And then you asked about, you know, what about staying within the company's positioning and the rules, right? And you get into a lot of trouble when you get outside the rules. The company can get fines. The entire company can get into trouble. It's just like, you know, if you look at the financial services industry, there's so much regulation on what you can say. And look at the medical industry. There's so much regulation with what you're actually allowed to say to doctors. And indirect selling, the consultants have to stay in the rules. Because if they don't, like if they're making false claims, then they're setting unrealistic expectations for somebody that's new that might want to join. And, you know, if you're going out and telling people that they can make, you know, millions of dollars, and they're going to be really upset if in that first year that they're not $1 million earner. And, you know, you might not think, well, it's not a big deal to brag about a real story that you hear, but it really does set the entire company back because you're over promising and you're under delivering. And when you do that, you create customers that are not just dissatisfied, but it can really turn into somebody who's a brand terrorist. You know, that person that's going to stay up all night and post horrible things on your site and just their mission is just to hurt you because you've hurt them by setting these expectations that are not possible to achieve.
Yeah, but that's important, both staying in the lines of what's the right thing to do, but also that brand consistency with the company. Other things you're seeing out there that that don't work, perhaps turning people off besides the unrealistic expectations?
As far as the communication on...
Yeah, in that sort of brand establishment and communications.
Right. Yeah. You know, a lot of people are just focusing their brand around themselves.
Yeah.
And it puts people off, and they forget to really focus on the people that matter. And so just almost spamming people, and they just get this real dislike for the company because they're just constantly seeing messages on their social that aren't really interesting to them. So messages that are off brand, messages that don't make sense, messages that seem like you're hiding something, or you're not trying to be truthful, or, you know, trying to say that you have the best quality product and there's so much scarcity to it. But the reality is it's similar to many products out there. So you see a lot of that as well.
Yeah, and that word authenticity is so important. We've talked about that in several of our webinars that we've done leading up to this, and there's been a lot of research in that area in direct selling. I'm curious, Charmaine, how can direct selling companies, in your opinion, ensure that their brands are building authentic relationships with their customers and the sales force?
Yeah, that's a really important factor to consider in kind of all that you do. And all that you communicate online. So one of the first things I do when I work with companies is I sit and monitor, right? So putting together things like a listening campaign and a monitoring campaign to really hear the voice of the audience, to hear the voice of the industry, right? What are those, if you can hear someone, right, then they feel like you care, right? So listening to what the key topics are in the industry that people are discussing, the keywords, what are those industry pain points that a potential customer or rep might have? And then taking that and using it to kind of create valuable content that helps to solve problems. And with monitoring, we're actually listening to customers and seeing what they're, in reference to our brand, right? So what's the sentiment around our brand? What's the sentiment around our reps, right? What are the questions that are being asked about our brand? And, how are different ways that the customer's using the brand? All of this helps us to kind of monitor and adapt our content to the needs of the audience and really show that we value them and what they need. Another, key point would be kind of consistency, right? When you're consistent, you're more credible, it's more authentic. And consistency has a lot of points to it, right? So we could create kind of a social media style guide, right? Where we've got, we're on brand with our voice and tone, color palette, typography, imagery, even just the formatting and copy of the post. Maybe using, specific hashtags that are on brand. One of the ways to kind of, one of the tools out there where you can kind of have similar images for your team is Sprout Social. They have an asset library, and it's kind of built into their enterprise plan. And you can just kind of remotely store all your visual assets. And so they can really be set up to be on brand with similar, style and look and feel. And then team members can actually go straight to that asset library and publish directly from there. So that's a really great way. But really, the idea here is to establish kind of a voice that's cohesive and consistent and across all platforms, right? So we want to be relatable and human, reliable, and kind of accurately illustrate core missions, vision, and values. And really stand for something and be authentic about it. There's other ways, having quality content, sharing stories, testimonials, creating campaigns that collect user-generated content. That's all more trusted, more credible. and also kind of engaging with our audience. So we can schedule our content all day. That's a great strategy, helps with consistency. We can share others' content, others' content on a consistent basis as well. That's great. But that personal interaction, right, where it's a one-on-one conversation that's happening, that really is what is considered authentic. And one of the things I'm finding is that companies are not helping, they need to help their reps and their employees with engagement, because you're really building on this network, right? We can spend all day saying, this is the content we're going to post, and it's great, and it's crafted, and it's on brand, and voice, and everything. But, when we post on Facebook, when we post on, Twitter, they're a business. So they want to boost the most engaging content possible. So we've got to help kind of boost our content and make it engaging. So asking questions in our posts, right? Creating a schedule to go and one-on-one engage with people in the industry, other accounts, potential people in the area that we're, promoting to, mentioning certain accounts to get their attention, lots of different ways. So I think, Stephanie, we have an example that we wanted, that we can show of, a really great post from, what is it? Bodywear, actually.
Central Bodywear, yeah.
Yeah, and I was hoping I could get everyone kind of involved in helping me out here. So here is, a great image, a very empowering message, just a daily reminder that you're truly amazing and don't ever forget it, right? That's wonderful. How could we perhaps alter this post to engage our audience a little more? What could we potentially say? And I would love to see, your ideas in chat if anyone wants to take a stab at that.
Hey, everybody. That image, think about what you would do to add to that.
Okay, so some don't like the image. Ask the question. Absolutely. Asking a question is so important, right? Because you're kind of telling people what to do with the post instead of actively kind of scrolling through and just viewing. How can you get your participants to be active? All right, raise your hand if you agree. Yeah. So one of the things I thought, yeah, these are some really good examples here. What I was kind of thinking was, listen, people are at home, they're not engaging as much in person anymore. It's all online. They're looking for ways to connect, right? And to show their friends like, hey, I still love you. I haven't seen you in a while, but I'm here for you. Or here's a funny meme. Here's a funny something. Here's an empowering message to get you through your day, however you're feeling. So what if we had altered this and said something like, tag a friend who is truly amazing, right? So now we're expanding our reach. We're building on our network, right? And now we're giving people something to connect about, right? So that's just kind of an example of, could we kind of create, not just templates, but easy prompts and specific strategies that our reps could potentially take advantage of and use to build on that engagement, right? And to build their community. And lastly, kind of influencers, right? So influencers, they've built a trust and following. People are taking their recommendations to make their buying decisions. They're considering them an expert, knowledgeable, they're attracting more followers. And so it's really important to use influencers that would, make sense, that would be on brand, that would create that kind of third party credibility and trust, and word of mouth that could positively influence buying decisions. So those are kind of, I know that's a lot, but those are some really great ways of building authenticity.
Yeah, I appreciate that and like that discussion. It's interesting. We got a question that came in from Antonella Rispoli. So there's our first book to go out. But it's interesting. I'd like to hear both your insights on how a company can do a listening campaign, and what are the tools to catch the key topics in the industry, as I've sort of talked about.
So there's a lot of different tools that you can use. I mean, you can just use Google, right? You can use Reddit or discussion boards, but you can also use tools like Sprout Social, Hootsuite, and you can actually plug in specific keywords and follow any mention of those keywords. You can actually do sentiment analysis to find out any positive or negative comments regarding specific keywords. And again, those keywords can be obviously your brand name or products specifically that you have, but they can also just be about topics in general. You know, you can actually understand, should I be talking about this specific topic right now? What's the sentiment around it? And then that informs your content marketing strategy. So there's a lot of tools. They're easier to use than you think. You can even listen just by using the social media account itself, going on Twitter and searching keyword, going on Instagram and searching, you know, all posts about a certain topic. But obviously the tools that I mentioned will kind of aggregate that information and produce reports for you, which is nice.
Great. Stephanie, anything you want to add to that?
Sure. You know, it's so easy to just go onto the social platform of your choice and see what the conversation looks like. If you just type in your company's name, then you can see what people are posting about. And if you want to look at other things that they're talking about, if you're looking at positive things or negative, or if you just put the name in, then you can see how people are posting. And it really informs you on how things are going and what people are passionate enough that they're going to post and put along with their brand. And you can easily do something like a Google alert where you put in whatever the keywords are that you want. It can have your company name, like you want to get an alert every time your company has is mentioned. And you'll start to see, you can easily just on the surface understand some of the trends when you're looking at it that way.
Yeah. Good. Well, thinking about kind of going back to this COVID environment that we're in and the economic struggles that have come for some because of that, it's kind of a sensitive time, and it feels like there's some reluctance to push sales in that sort of environment. Through social media, what kind of advice would you give people to, as they have those sensitivities, to really sort of ignite their sales and push their products?
Sure. I mean, you know, and if you think about it, it could be really disheartening if everyone's suffering and struggling and someone's just posting, buy my product, buy my product, buy my product, right? It could really feel like that's not authentic because you're not allowing the customer to, you know, be true to themselves. And the thing though to remember is that everyone is looking for solutions to their problems, whether it's finding motivation to work out or to look younger, if it's to build a business. And now is really the time to help them solve their problems, because COVID and quarantine and a pandemic, all these things that are happening, they don't make people's problems go away. They just make their problems really worse. So the big advice is really don't assume that you know what the problems are, because sometimes we get so caught up in hearing the stories and thinking that we know what the solution is, that we start to pitch product before we get to know them and before we get to know what's really wrong. And often those problems people are having, you know, they keep them up at night. You know, they run a lot deeper than what you really know. And so it's important to get to know that customer, to spend time listening to them, really to ask them questions. You don't make them feel like they're on the witness stand. It's like, where are you the night of this? So you want to ask questions and follow up in meaningful ways. Right now, you can also take a deep dive into your brand. You want to make sure that you've identified the right target. Start to do your research. You can create surveys. You can create groups. You can create, you know, free opportunities that make sense for people. Maybe if they're having a hard time justifying the cost, just to maybe educate them a little bit and build relationships with them without asking for much right now. It's an excellent time to do training. You can engage, just write personal messages and make sure you're really listening, make sure you're asking questions, make sure you're following up. hear the people's stories. You really get to know them. Right now, there's a lot of posts on weight gain and, you know, mental health during the quarantine. So it's an excellent time to, you know, reach out to people if you're into fitness. I actually do some of the Beachbody workouts and I take the shake, and my coach, Monica, she offers a free like nutrition group. And so it's like a private Facebook group for people, and it gets them to start working on their nutrition. And then it starts to pull them in over time if they want to get a little bit deeper into it. And by doing that, she's creating these communities of people that are supporting each other. It's mostly women, but they're building important bonds with each other. And that way you have this accountability partner, right? And usually if people are gonna take a deep dive into something, you know, like let's say we're gonna go into the Whole30 diet, usually I'm not gonna do it alone. I'm gonna do it with somebody. And so you get this support group of people that want you to succeed. And you know, it just keeps you coming back. So you're a loyal customer, and it helps you to stay on track to meet your goals. And, you know, you don't even have to think about just selling. Just try to make somebody's day. You can call them out and give them a compliment because they're working hard or they've done something really great. And now is the time to work on your content, right? If you have a lot of downtime, you can start to brainstorm and create videos and hone in on your brand. You can create that foundation that we were talking about, and learn, like Charmaine was saying, Hootsuite. Hootsuite is such a great tool because you can reach many people on different platforms by scheduling posts and taking less time out of your schedule to do this. So you can create your content calendar. You can say, oh, on Mondays, we want to talk Motivation Mondays. You know, on Thursday, we want to, right? So you can identify what do you want to post and make your life so much easier later. You can take a look back at your analytics and see how things are going. You definitely want to have a business page for your actual business and for your brand, because that way you get insights into more of the analytics of who's looking at what's working really well. And, you know, getting to know people is so important, because 6 months ago, what was important to people, it's not the same thing that's important right now. And you really need to get to know people and see what's happening, but then also filter this back to the company so that whatever you're learning, you're able to share that and to help people. A lot of times we think knowledge is power, right? It's like, oh, the more knowledge I have, the more powerful I am. But really, what's the most powerful is sharing the knowledge, and then we can all get better together.
Yeah. I really like that discussion of how important listening is to that authenticity that we all sort of seek and talk about. And I liked Antonella's question about listening effectively and how do we do that and what are the tools for doing that. We have another question from our audience. Jonathan Gilbert, one of your fellows, asked, as both of you sit at the intersection of sales and marketing, any thoughts or tips for companies trying to successfully align social media strategies across both marketing and sales functions? Because two areas at times don't meet as you wish for them to. Any thoughts on that?
That's actually a great point. And for the Rainmakers application and training tool that we have, I actually have 11 interns, and 6 of them are selling and 5 of them are marketing. And the groups actually work together. I actually had all of the marketing people go out and try to do some social selling so they understood what it was like. And so by having those groups working together, it's just critically important, because now marketing starts to understand what kind of content they need to build that's going to really support the salespeople. And if the salespeople they have to constantly flow back and give information about, you know, what are they struggling with? What don't people understand that the marketing team can create content on, can create infographics and different designs so that they can share that to help the buyers potentially understand what it is.
Charmaine, anything on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think they do work hand in hand and they inform each other. And we think about the buyer's journey, it really ties in well to understand kind of how is the potential lead kind of onboarded, and then how do we kind of create more qualified leads for the salespeople through different marketing strategies and content, pushing them through the funnel. So yeah,
Sure.
I agree.
Well, Charmaine, sort of get back to what we were discussing earlier. So how do you integrate social media into the customer journey as we think about that? A lot of discussion about that within our industry. And why is that so important?
Yeah, you know, the customer journey mapping is such an important part of our training because, you know, these days, a lot of that journey is starting on social media, right? So that's where people are tuned in. That's where they're connecting. You know, they're waiting to hear from you. And so a lot of the journey's focus, the beginning stages are happening on social media. And, you know, the idea here is that, you know, many people are online and we have to cater to that. And a lot of companies will focus kind of on organic strategies, you know, posting schedule, informing customers of like a promotion or some sort of event. And we can, you know, talk endlessly on ways to make that organic journey more optimized. And that's really great for people who already know about your business. But what's often kind of missed is the start of the journey, or how do those people that don't know you exist actually find you? Right. And so we have to kind of map out all the different ways that potential customers could enter the journey so we can create this more robust strategy. So you can follow this journey, right? So tools we're talking with UTM codes, Google Analytics. And we have to think about, you know, the funnel and people in each phase and what is everyone's experience in each phase and how can we evaluate those phases and touch points and then improve them. So we think about, you know, awareness, consideration, and decision, right? So like an awareness, right? So it's an entry point for someone who's never heard of your company. And that could be a referral from a friend, an influencer referral. Maybe someone has a problem. They do a Google search, try to solve it, see options. But then we have social media ads, right? So super targeted way to find people that are interested in what you have to offer. Right? So a Facebook ad sending you to a landing page with some sort of what we call like lead magnet, right? So a coupon, a discount, maybe you give your email address, right? And so now we can kind of nurture that lead with helpful information. Maybe they then visit the website, they might make a purchase, they might leave something in their cart, you know, phone rings, kids crying, whatever happens. But now with dynamic ads based on your journey, we can then remarket to you, right? And show you the next time you visit something that you left in your cart, something complementary to what you bought previously, and kind of remind people about what they were interested in. You can use a Facebook ad that sends you to a messenger chat bot. Maybe you sign up for a webinar, maybe you sign up for a demo. Maybe you connect on a Facebook live group or are asked to join, you know, some sort of VIP community, lots of different options there. And then we get into kind of consideration, right? So here, now the customer knows that you exist and they're considering you as an option, but they're still evaluating. So an organic post here really makes sense, right? Because maybe you can join a group and learn more. Maybe you can go on a Facebook Live and talk about the product. People can learn more. Maybe you can bring in people who've used the product, testimonials, right? You can create, you know, ways to reshare testimonials that create that authenticity and maybe seals the deal. And then finally, we're at decision, right? So now we've converted and we want to engage our current customers. We want to maybe do a fun contest where they mention a friend so you can expand your network. And now we're collecting more user-generated content with this contest. Maybe they posted their favorite whatever using a hashtag. That's repostable. And it's really building on, you know, that love of your community and your fan base, and again, authenticity. And so we have to kind of evaluate all these various touch points along, you know, that journey and what's the experience people are having. And then, you know, how can we improve on that? And what I'm seeing is, you know, when you follow that journey, you'll find some of the discrepancies, right? And you want to try to create kind of a personalized journey for your audience, right? So if you're trying to target reps and you have this, you know, great Facebook ad talking about, you know, starting your own business and, you know, being, you know, in charge of your own destiny, if that then sends you to a website trying to get you to buy a product, well, that doesn't align. That's not a personalized journey. So we need to create, you know, landing pages for each campaign, right? That really follows the voice and the copy and the journey that that specific audience was targeted for. You know, if I am browsing Instagram and I land on an ad for, say, you know, candles, and then I'm taken to a page that's dedicated to becoming a business owner, I might get confused and leave the journey, right? So you want to make sure that the journey's authentic, that it's on brand, and it's taking people to why they started the journey to begin with.
And I imagine we evaluate and approach those journeys very differently for whether it's a sales representative or a customer, right? Or just a customer.
Absolutely. And you can do that very easily by creating, you know, not everyone has to go to your website, right? In fact, it should be a catered landing page that you take them to. And there's ways to do that pretty easily. It just a lot of organization and a lot of kind of strategically placing and writing copy that, you know, follows the journey. But we have to analyze the journey to begin with, because a lot of the times we're missing the first step. And I think that's a big problem.
Got you. So I want to go to another audience question that we got from Carrie Charlick previously. She asked for your thoughts, both of your thoughts on specific advice in targeting advertising on social media.
I mean, generally speaking, it's such an important thing to do. It's lower cost, there's measurable ROI, there's ways to track, you know, attribution, knowing which post, which ad from what channel created, you know, the most conversions. It's a great way to push, you know, people along the journey. And the thing of it is that these algorithms are killing us, right? So even if you have, let's say, you know, 5,000 people following on Facebook, that doesn't mean they're all seeing your posts, right? So we've got to target with paid. We have to pay to play. Simple as that.
Right. Stephanie, I'm curious to go back to something you mentioned earlier about brand terrorists. A great term for what it is. Can you talk a little bit about social media monitoring and the appropriate responsiveness that you need and crisis management and sort of dealing with people to make sure that they don't get to that point, or if they do, perhaps you can bring them back?
Sure. It's so important to listen even when we're hearing something that we don't want to hear. When you have somebody that's had this bad experience, maybe they've been overpromised and underdelivered, like we talked about before, and they thought they were going to make a lot of money and they didn't, or they thought the product was going to be able to perform in a certain way for them and it didn't. We have to be honest and understand that there's always something that's going to go wrong. Nobody and no company and no product is 100% perfect, but it's how we handle that that makes a difference. And so if you're looking and you're monitoring for things that didn't go well, then you want to be able to address those right away. So first, you want to learn a little bit more about the problem. You probably want to take that person offline to really get into it. But when you are really upset about something, one of the things that helps is to listen, right? To have someone hear your story, to understand it. So you know that the person really understands you. Like, even if we're having a fight with our significant other, it just keeps going on because we feel like we were never really heard. Like, we want to just keep saying it and explaining it because we're like, that person just doesn't understand, or you never listen to me. And that's what customers can feel like. So you've got to really clarify and dig deep and understand what's the problem. Why are they so upset about it? You know, what does this mean to them? So if we can get into that, then the person is already going to start to feel a little bit better because somebody cares enough to listen. But then we can't just stop there. We've got to apologize if there's really a challenge, or apologize for the inconvenience. We don't necessarily have to agree, but we have to respect them and appreciate that they had this negative experience and try to make it right. You know, try to fix the problem really if there is one. And if it's just a misunderstanding, then we have to provide data and clarify if something is just misunderstood and fix it. But definitely apologize, and definitely on the social channels, show that this was actually cleared up. So have you ever, you know, shopped anywhere on like Amazon and you looked at the reviews, or maybe you're going to go out to a restaurant to eat? You don't usually look at the 1 or the 5-star reviews. to see if that's something that you want to eat. Like you never know, because you always think, oh, the person that gave the really high reviews, like that must have just been a happy person, or like a customer that was really not a customer. They were paid. They were a covert marketer, you know? And so you actually look at like, well, what did the 1-star people say? Like, what was the problem? What was so bad that they gave it a 1-star or a 2-star or 3-star? That really informs us as consumers of what the real drawback might be for that product. And we don't want to just look and see, oh, this person stayed at a hotel and they had a roach in their room and they were just so upset that they left. Like, we don't want to just see that. We want to see the manager coming on or somebody responding and saying that they're, you know, I'm very sorry that this happened, and, you know, providing some kind of a solution, because I think we can all appreciate that something negative or bad could happen at any point. It's how we recover from that and how we, you know, build that relationship and show them that we're actually really there for them.
Right. And that especially, I love showing them that we're engaged with them and that we're in the fight with them and we're trying to address what they're upset about. You know, an interesting comment from Joe Mariano, who unfortunately is 1 tick late for a free book, but I think an interesting comment I would love to hear your thoughts on nonetheless, either or both of you. I think of Charmaine, you mentioned the algorithms. Everyone's seen these viral posts that purport to tell users how to affect the algorithm in Facebook that determines, you know, who's seeing what. Are these phony, or is this something that is something that you can really do?
So, you know, when I think about the algorithm, I just think, you know, all these social media channels, they're all businesses and they're trying to keep their audience on their platform for as long as possible. And human nature we want to be entertained, right? So the more engaging your content is, signals to Facebook or Instagram or what have you, that this should be bumped up. So engagement is measured by likes, comments, shares, right? So what gets people to like, comment, and share, right? It's a video, it's something engaging, it's something valuable, it's something that asks a question or asks me to mention or contribute, right? It's a conversation that keeps going. So I think someone else earlier asked, like, is it important to actually respond to comments? You know, and the answer is yes, right? To know that they're, you know, that also signals to these channels that this content is engaging and entertaining and should be bumped up. So there's just kind of basic principles, and then obviously there's bots and things you can pay for to make it act like a human is on the other end engaging. But chances are those won't be set up correctly. It'll alert the channels, you'll get flagged, and it's not authentic and it shows. So yeah.
Okay, that's great. Another question from one of our participants, Jonathan Gilbert, once more. I think this is a great question. Given that there's so many social media platforms, I think your book addresses this as well, they seem to change so frequently. Any advice on how many platforms a single direct sales rep should be managing at any one time, and what should they prioritize?
I think it really looks at, first of all, where is your audience? Mm-hmm. You know, if you're going after a certain audience, you have to make sure that you're going to the place where they are and where they want to hear this kind of communication, where they're going to receive that communication as well. So I think at first, to decide where you want to go is your audience really in that place, and how effective can you be on that outlet? But when you have tools like Hootsuite, it actually allows you to be on so many more places and get more mileage out of the content you create, because you can just go in and easily schedule your posts and then engage with your audience just from one platform.
That's great. So another question, one of the things I really like about the book that the two of you wrote is that there's strategies that you can implement day by day, and it really kind of walks you through those things. As we get toward the end of our time, Stephanie and Charmaine, each of you, I think, how can the sales field, focusing on our earlier discussion of building authentic relationships, what should they start doing today? What gets them out of the gate?
Well, one of the things that you can do in that listening campaign is just put those feelers out and identify the trends. One of the things that I saw Ben and Jerry's do, which was just, it was so interesting. You know, they started looking at the trends of how people were posting, and they started seeing that their brand was mentioned a lot, the Ben and Jerry's ice cream brand, whenever it was raining. And they were just like, you know, what's going on with this? And they realized that people were starting to sit inside and they'd watch Netflix and they'd want to eat ice cream and snuggle up whenever it was raining. So starting to identify, like listening in, identifying those trends. And then Ben and Jerry's came out with a campaign called Netflix and Chilled, right? Because it was what people were talking about. It was allowing the brand to be true to itself. It was allowing the customers to be true to their self, and really, you know, capitalizing on all that. So if we just quickly look in and identify some of the trends, that can be really helpful. You know, you have companies in direct selling, you have USANA and Zurvita and Herbalife, right? And they're very much nutritionally based. And so you can look at what are some of the trends out there. A lot of people right now are focusing on their health. They're very busy. They need to be more energized. So how can those brand messages align with what's really happening there? I looked at Scentsy, and I saw, you know, their brand it's fill your life with fragrance. And people are home so much more now than they ever were before. And so getting them to think about some of those really positive memories. And I think we also talked about essential body wear, and people are home wearing the same things, and essential body wear. It was, I looked at try it on, love it on, right? And they're feeling good and they're feeling better about themselves, and they're constantly at home, maybe wearing the same outfit for a couple of days sometimes, is what I've seen in some of the posts, but they're also seeing themselves because they're on a lot of these FaceTime and Zoom calls. So they realize, like, how do they look and how are they feeling when they're there?
Yeah. Charmaine, anything to add on what gets you out of the box today?
Yeah, I think that, you know, just based on some of the key topics we've talked about today is how can companies create kind of a playbook, right? Of engagement strategies, of prompts to help the reps. How could they create maybe a social media style guide that's just, you know, distributed to stay on brand? Even the crisis management plan, right? And even a social media policy on what's okay and what's not is really important. You'd be surprised what some people think is okay. But, you know, a crisis management plan, you know, is beyond just, you know, make sure you're present and respond, but how do we respond? And a lot of the times we can get defensive when we see a negative comment or review. But if we can, you know, create scenarios of not so negative to very negative, you know, potential comments, and a pre-approved message that goes out that we're trained to disseminate in a quick amount of time is important. And in building on that authenticity, sometimes just leaving, you know, the reps or the person who responded's initials at the end of the post makes it feel like there was a person who heard me on the other end. And that's really important too. So I think there's a lot that we can equip our Salesforce with that is strategic, you know, is timely, and really helps kind of, you know, build consistency.
Yeah.
And Gary, by doing that, you help your Salesforce, because now they don't have to be everything to everyone. You're providing them those tools to succeed, which really takes some of that burden away. And it helps the company to stay on message.
Yeah, right on. Great advice. And Stephanie and Charmaine, thank you so much for these great insights today. Your fantastic book is a lot there that I think people can dig into and benefit from, but also for being a part of the Dscf Fellows Program. I think, as most of our audience knows, we have made a priority of connecting with the academic community. We have over 250 fellows who are doing research about the industry, not only research to tell the industry story and tell a data-driven story about the industry externally, but research to help the industry get better and help the industry sort of learn from the insights that you have to help us reach students. We've reached over 150,000 students as we built this program over the last 3 years with content about direct selling. So we're filling that vacuum of knowledge that's often there, or replacing some of the negative attitudes that might be there with more accurate information about the channel. So really appreciate you guys being such a big part of that and for the great job that you did today. I want to just also finish by thanking our audience and everyone that participated with us today. Great questions, great comments, and we encourage you to share the recording of this session with your colleagues, with your Salesforce. I think there's a lot of depth and a lot to learn there. And also continue the conversation with us as we continue to work with Steph and Charmaine and their academic colleagues around the country as well. I want to once again encourage everyone to keep participating in both the Dscf Insights, which are part of the Engage series that DSA has put together, and the DSA webinar series that continues as we continue this program. We've got 2 coming up on customer behavior during COVID, which I think will be a fascinating discussion with Mike Solomon, and also Doctors Haya Ajan and Dana Harrison talking about research analytics and how to use those effectively in your business. So I want to finally put up the slide one more time that sort of gives you an idea of what's going on with DSA and DSCF currently. And please sign up to listen to the discussion on July 23rd between the 2 boards, DSA and DSCF boards, led by another fellow, Dr. Ann Coughlin from Northwestern University. With that, I thank our DSCF team for pulling this together so nicely, and our fantastic guests, Charmaine and Stephanie. We really appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you all.
Thank you.